Today, we are deep diving into one of the most jaw-dropping, facepalm-inducing cybersecurity failures in modern U.S. political history. I'm talking about the ongoing and ever-expanding SignalGate controversy, the unauthorized use of encrypted messaging apps like Signal by Trump administration officials to coordinate sensitive and sometimes even classified government business. This isn't just a one-off scandal. What started as poor security practices during Trump's first administration, casually using Signal with no oversight or audit trail, has now evolved into a pattern of behavior. That early normalization of consumer apps for government comms set the stage for what's become not one, but two major breaches that we know of. The first led to a journalist being accidentally added to a Signal group discussing Yemen war plans. And now, only about a month later, we've got a second round of leaks with even more shocking details. But to fully understand the scope of how bad this is and why this isn't just some partisan shouting match, I'm going to walk you through it all. From the technical failures and compliance violations to the cybersecurity risks posed by family members and unofficial insiders, to the use of Signal, a consumer-grade app for national security conversations, and the broader context. Yes, we've talked about Obama's BlackBerry, Hillary Clinton's private email server, BleachBit, and Trump's Mar-a-Lago bathroom document fiasco. Now, this particular video is a follow-up to all of that. Our last full expose was over an hour long and covered the first two SignalGate chapters in detail. There's a card above linking to that video if you want the full timeline from Obama to Clinton to Trump 1.0. But today, we're focusing on the newest incident, SignalGate 3.0 as I'm dubbing it. Some are calling it 2.0, but we have to remember 1.0 started with Trump 1.0's administration. And look, I know long form isn't for everyone, but if you care about cybersecurity, digital transparency, and the basic expectation that public servants should follow the same rules the rest of us do, I strongly encourage you to watch this one start to finish. Because whether you're Team Red, Team Blue, or Team Just Make It Secure, this story isn't about politics. It's about operational security. It's about how powerful people are bypassing the very systems meant to protect our nation and getting caught in increasingly reckless ways. And as always, my only allegiance is to cybersecurity and public transparency. I don't care who is in office. If you break best practices, I'm going to call it out. We'll get to the full breakdown in just a second, but first, like, subscribe, and check the links in the description for all the ways you can support this channel and stay connected. Join the Discord and Matrix, follow on Mastodon, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Twitch, and if you believe in independent, no BS tech coverage like this, consider supporting on Patreon or grabbing some merch, links below. Now, let's talk about how the United States government has managed to leak its own war plans through group chats again, and what that tells us about digital hygiene in the White House. The second leak. What happened? According to a new report from the New York Times, we now have confirmation of a second unauthorized Signal group chat. This one continuing well into Trump's current term, where confidential discussions about U.S. airstrikes in Yemen were allegedly taking place. Once again, the group bypassed all formal security infrastructure, used no official communication tools, and had zero auditability. But what sets this incident apart from the first is who was involved. This wasn't just a handful of officials or political appointees like the last leak we had. According to the Times and other reports, this Signal chat allegedly included Pete Hegseth, his wife Jennifer Hegseth, his brother, and apparently even his attorney, none of whom hold national security clearances or official positions in the Trump administration. Let that sink in. Not only were they discussing active military operations in a Signal thread with no oversight, they were doing so with private citizens, family members, and outside legal counsel, all in the same chat. And the leaks were not theoretical. Officials familiar with the matter told the Times that this shadow NSC chat wasn't just for gossip. It was allegedly being used to coordinate or weigh in on real-time military actions, including the controversial Yemen strike that made headlines weeks ago. This raises a laundry list of red flags. The lack of security hardening, the absence of endpoint monitoring, the exposure of classified conversations to unverified devices. It's a perfect storm of operational security failure. We're not talking about secure government devices with restricted app installs or remote wipe capabilities. These were likely off-the-shelf personal phones completely outside the federal ecosystem with no mobile device management and no safeguards to prevent screenshots, message leaks, or even compromise by nation-state actors. And remember, in the previous incident, Trump officials accidentally added a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, to their Signal group chat. That alone should have been a wake-up call. Instead, here we are again. One former official described this new group as a shadow NSC, an unofficial, unsanctioned parallel to the National Security Council, operating with no chain of command, no classification controls, and no public accountability. And if you're wondering how dangerous that is, imagine a private group chat of your boss's friends, family, and lawyer making decisions for your entire company without HR, legal, or IT knowing about it. Now scale that up to the White House and national security. This isn't just a bad idea. It's dangerous, reckless, and a complete subversion of every control mechanism designed to protect the public, ensure democratic oversight, and prevent back-channel policymaking. And it begs the question, if they're doing this in a group chat, what else are they bypassing? What this reveals, again, this latest incident confirms what many of us in the InfoSec world suspected after the first SignalGate fiasco. This wasn't some accidental one-off or a moment of bad judgment. This was, and likely still is, a pattern. It wasn't a breach of protocol. It was the protocol. What happened in Trump's first administration wasn't just a lesson unlearned. It became the blueprint. Using Signal wasn't a bug. It was the feature. And as I covered in detail in my last exposé, which you can check out using the card on screen or linked in the description, Signal, while a fantastic app for personal use, is fundamentally unsuited for government operations. There are no enterprise controls, no administration access revocation, no way to enforce zero trust policies, and no real capacity or for retention or auditability. The entire system is tied to personal phone numbers, which opens up attack vectors like SIM swapping, SS7, System Signal 7, vulnerabilities, and total identity ambiguity, which we discussed in the last video. This group doesn't use secure government devices. They didn't use apps tied to verified identities through an identity provider, IDP, with SAML authentication or device compliance checks, security assertion markup language. They didn't even use something like Microsoft Teams Government Cloud or Matrix with managed servers, which we've discussed in the last video. Instead, they created a consumer-grade chat room that auto-deleted after 7 days by design. And this is the key. This isn't operational security. This is optical security. It's not about protecting information from adversaries. It's about making sure the public, journalists, and federal investigators can't retroactively access it. When you set your messages to vanish by default in a national security context, it's not about encryption, it's about erasure. And now, with reports confirming that family members and outside, unvetted participants were in the group chat, this isn't just a cybersecurity violation, it's a fundamental breach of institutional trust. It's the collapse of protocol, where access to sensitive national decision-making was granted not by clearance or merit, but by who you know, who you're married to, or who represents you in court. This reveals a culture that views official policy and procedure as suggestions, not standards. A government within a government, free from accountability, free from documentation, and entirely outside the scope of FOIA, the Presidential Act, Records Act, or any chain of command. We're not just looking at bad digital hygiene here. We're looking at a coordinated effort to bypass oversight, a ghost network of government operations run out of a signal thread. Ironically, the very same deep state that Donald Trump rails against. And just like the first time, the systems meant to stop this failed. Let's talk about accountability versus encryption. Let's get to the heart of the issue. Signal is not the enemy, but it was absolutely the wrong tool for this job. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Signal is fantastic for private individuals. I use it in my personal life. I recommend it to journalists, whistleblowers, privacy advocates, anyone who needs secure encrypted communication without centralized oversight. It's open source. It's vetted by the InfoSec community. It's one of the best tools for protecting personal privacy in a surveillance-heavy world. I've even discussed this in a prior video when debunking conspiracies around Tor and Signal being backdoored because some governments happen to donate to them. I will leave a card above for anyone wanting to watch that video. But it was never designed for government operations, not at the municipal level, not at the state level, not at the federal level, and certainly not for war planning. Signal is built to protect you from being tracked, but it also protects officials from being held accountable, because there's no central admin console, no enterprise user directory, no user revocation policies, no audit trail or message retention, and critically, no integration with secure device management or identity platforms. So when top-level government actors use Signal to coordinate national security policy, they are choosing secrecy over structure, and they know it. That's not an accidental oversight. That's a deliberate strategy to avoid FOIA compliance, public accountability, and internal visibility. And we already walked through all of this in detail in my previous video, the full hour-long expose on SignalGate, where we broke down why government communications require platforms with secure audit and access control, why metadata and phone number-based identity is a massive threat vector, thanks to System Signal 7, also known as SS7, and how solutions do exist that balance security and accountability. Let's take a sidebar so we can talk about those. What they could be using if government officials actually cared about doing this the right way. Here are the tools they could already be using, as we discussed in the last video about SignalGate. Matrix with SAML authentication and identity provider enforcement. Open source, federated, and used by other governments like France with TCHAP. Shah. Still don't know how to pronounce that. Microsoft Teams Government Cloud. Specifically designed for U.S. federal use, compliant with FedRAMP, ITAR, and CJIS. Slack Enterprise Grid supports granular access control, audit logging, and retention policies for regulated industries. Google Workspace for government. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Google Workspace, it exists for agencies using secure Google Cloud infrastructure with endpoint enforcement and auditing. But Signal Proxy with mobile device management, MDM, not a real solution. There's no official enterprise version that integrates with MDM, SAML, or audit tooling. You can route signal traffic through proxies, but you can't enforce device compliance, revoke access, or log conversations in a government-compliant way. These platforms aren't just secure. They are auditable, manageable, and, most importantly, compliant. They're already in use across federal agencies. There is no excuse to be bypassing these systems for consumer chat apps downloaded off the App Store. If you want real-time collaboration and records that stand up in court or congressional hearings, you use the right infrastructure. Anything less is deliberate evasion. And the fact that this is still happening, even after the original SignalGate incident, shows that they're not just ignoring warnings, they're doubling down on opacity. This is about dodging oversight, not preventing leaks, because true secure systems don't just encrypt. They log, they verify, and they hold people accountable. And when leaders use encryption like a magic cloak to disappear into untraceable back channels, that's not national defense. That is digital misconduct. This is a pattern of behavior. This isn't just a one-off. This is now the third SignalGate we've documented. The number one was the 2016 era Signal usage to avoid audits and bypass proper comms channels. Then we had the Yemen strike group chat that mistakenly included a journalist. And now a private chat including Hegseth's inner circle after the fallout of the second incident was already public. If anything, this shows an escalation of behavior, not a course correction. The response from officials so far? Mostly silence. No accountability, no public audit trail, no official review of secure communication protocols. In fact, what we're seeing now feels like a White House and leadership team that have learned nothing except to further embrace the deep state and deepen the swamp they promised to clear out. Family involvement equals a big red flag. Let's talk about the family angle for a moment, because this is where the red flags start waving like it's DEFCON 1. No, not the famous cybersecurity and hacker conference I love going to. Hopefully I'll have more content around that this year. Planning's still up in the air as of this video, but hey, make sure you're subscribed if you want to see DEFCON coverage when the time comes. But back to this mess. If this Signal group chat did really include people like Pete Hegseth's wife, Jennifer Hegseth, his brother, and even his attorney as reported, that's not just reckless. That's operational insanity. These aren't officials with formal government roles. They're not on payroll, they're not cleared, and they're most certainly not operating under any kind of federal cybersecurity framework. Let's just ask the obvious. Were they using government-issued secure devices? Were those devices monitored for intrusion or tampering? Were they required to use strong multi-factor authentication? Were their identities validated through a centralized identity provider, IDP, like you'd see in an actual zero-trust government environment? My guess, a hard no across the board. We're not talking about hardened, classified-ready BlackBerries like Barack Obama used or the successors to those devices, or even secure matrix instances with SAML authentication and device posture enforcement. We're talking about off-the-shelf iPhones, Androids, apps downloaded from the App Store, and Signal group chats running on whatever Wi-Fi was available. Maybe at home, maybe a hotel, maybe even Starbucks. And here's the thing. Even if you trust the individuals, you cannot trust the devices unless they've been vetted and enrolled into an endpoint-managed zero-trust environment. That's day one cybersecurity hygiene. This isn't advanced InfoSec. This is basic digital hygiene 101. And if we've learned anything over the last decade, it's this. Family members are always a soft target for nation-state adversaries. Whether it's phishing campaigns, metadata correlation, or good old-fashioned social engineering, informal players tied to high-ranking officials are prime espionage vectors. We've seen this play out in Clinton's aide spouse's laptop turning up with sensitive emails, foreign intelligence targeting the family of diplomats, even TikTok influencers who date politicians becoming espionage targets, so when a sitting official casually invites their spouse, sibling, or personal attorney into a Signal chat discussing military operations in Yemen, that's not just unprofessional. It's borderline negligent. And look, I get it. People trust their families. They want someone to vent to or loop in during moments of chaos. But trust isn't a substitute for policy, especially not when national security is on the line. This is a textbook case of how informal power structures, friends, family, donors, advisors, create formal cybersecurity vulnerabilities that no firewall or EDR can patch. The biggest vulnerability in cybersecurity is and always will continue to be the human. This isn't just about Signal. It's about a complete failure to compartmentalize, a failure to restrict access, a failure to enforce even the bare minimum standards for secure communications, and to be clear, this isn't about shaming individual participants, except Pete Hegseth and other elected and appointed officials. It's about holding people accountable that are allowed to have this kind of security theater pass for protocol. This is why official tools exist. The US government already has tools for this. You want secure communications? Use SIPRnet for secret-level material, JWIX for top secret, Microsoft Teams in Government Cloud, or Slack Enterprise Grid, both with audit logging, SSO, and revocation control, or Matrix with SAML and IAM, so if you're not using a compliant policy-enforced device, you're not getting in. Instead, they're using a free app tied to phone numbers and hoping disappearing messages will cover their tracks. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. The same mistakes, no lessons learned. So what do we see here? Signal group chats instead of secure comms, disappearing messages instead of record retention, family members and insiders instead of credentialed vetted staff, a second leak instead of lessons learned. It's not just that they're repeating the same mistakes, it's that they're doubling down on them with no sign of course correction, no acknowledgement of risk, and absolutely no effort to implement safeguards after the first incident blew up. This isn't just lazy, this is deliberate neglect, and it's not how any modern government should operate. This is counter to every cybersecurity best practice we teach in enterprise, in government, and literally any environment where information security matters. We're not asking them to invent new tech here. We have solutions, good ones. Matrix with federated, secure, audit-capable messaging, Microsoft Teams for government cloud with access control and retention compliance, Slack Enterprise Grid with SSO, logging, and strict role-based access. These are platforms that federal agencies already use every day for a reason, and they're built with both encryption and accountability in mind, and yet they're actively choosing to bypass all of that. Not out of ignorance, but out of convenience, or worse, out of intent. Because this isn't really about cybersecurity at all. It's about avoiding oversight. Plain and simple. The tools exist. They just don't use them. This is now two separate SignalGate leak incidents, one involving leaked war plans and a reporter, another involving family members and unvetted political allies, both under the same administration. This isn't random. This is a repeatable pattern, the kind you show cybersecurity students and say, this is how to not do secure communications. It undermines institutional trust, it weakens national defense, and it creates real-world risk vectors for espionage, insider threats, and legal violations under the Presidential Records Act. And let's be real, the way this group uses Signal with disappearing messages, no access control, and a just drop in your contacts approach, this will not be the last time something like this happens. Because without consequences, this isn't just a flaw, it becomes a feature of how they operate. I'll be honest, this is frustrating to watch as a cybersecurity professional. It's like yelling into the void while people at the highest levels of power treat encryption like a cloak of invisibility. If you agree that security without accountability isn't security at all, share this video. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and check the description for all my socials and links. You can follow me on Twitch, TikTok, Mastodon, Blue Sky. You can also join the Matrix and Discord for community discussions. If you want to support my work, check out the Patreon or grab some merch in the links below. Thanks for sticking around, and remember, stay safe, stay skeptical, stay secure, and for God's sake, stop using Signal to run the country. Happy hacking. See you in the next one.